be selected. That's the benefit of settlement.
Andy, maybe just so people can understand, why does somebody want to intervene? I think that can explain light to people understanding, like, what we're changing things. What are we changing, and what's the benefit for them?
They intervene because their site now would hypothetically allow one housing unit for every 6 acres, and they want one housing unit for every 10 acres. Not that. 10 units for every 1 acre. Right. So in other words, they'd be getting a significant bonus density. So whereas before,
the value of the land goes up 5-fold overnight.
Yeah. So that would be
the density is significant. Their proposal is significantly increasing the allowable density to whatever their proposal is. And if they're not selected, they want a seat at the table to try to chip away at what we're doing here to get their project included in the plan.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So people out there saying, why if I own this property, why would I want affordable housing on my property, right? You're saying, like, why, right? The zoning changes. So Holmdel has zoning of 2.5 acres per home, 1 acre per home, 5 acres per home. If you look at Palmer Avenue, it's 4 acres, right? 4 acres?
It's about 6 acres.
6 acres? Yeah. You're talking 10 units per acre, right?
Well, their proposal is 8.9 units per acre, yes.
So you can see, right, if you're a builder, that the higher density lets you build more homes per acre per return.
A perfect example is there is an intervener that we have here who has zoning on about 50 acres. That's 1 unit per 2.5 acres. They're proposing, which would give them about 20 units. They're proposing upwards of 200 units on the site in an area that everyone had discussed and decided that it was inappropriate for that high density housing. But that's why they're involved, because it went from it went up tenfold basically. So it went from 20 to about 200. There's a financial gain associated with that. So that's why they've intervened. And I anticipate when we go to the fairness hearing before the judge that they will have representation there and try to poke holes in the plan. I myself am very confident in the plan that's before you. It's developable, it's approvable, it's consistent with the regulations, and the fact that Fair Share Housing Center is entering into a settlement agreement with you for that plan. They wouldn't do that if they didn't think that the plan was realistic. And that they'll be, on Holmdel's side when we go to the fairness hearing saying, we vetted this out, this is a realistic project, and so it gives us added validity when we go through that court process to stand up to those developers that were not given their way on their property, basically.
Thank you.
Real quick, Greg, this chart that's up here wasn't, I believe, in the agenda packet. It would be helpful if that could be made available to the public.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you.
We'll do that. So maybe to speed things up, if you guys want to come up to the microphone, just line up behind the next person rather than me just calling you. I want to be able to hear everybody. So if one person wants to go, let's stay with 3 minutes. Ask your questions. Our professionals write them down. They'll respond to them, once you sit down, and then we'll just try to keep moving through. So I want everyone to have a chance who wants to be able to speak tonight.
Francine Campus, 2 Country Square Lane in Holmdel. Just a few questions. First one is, are these rentals or, not the Palmer Avenue, Middle Road, and North Piers? Are these rentals or purchases?
Rentals.
Well, the questions.
Then, if they are rentals, why did we decide all of a sudden to go for rentals? Because I think we get a different type of person and a different type of family that has commitment to worry about Holmdel, so I'm not so crazy about rentals. My other question is, why 2017, 2018 have pretty much the same properties on it? Why all of a sudden did we aggressively do what I think we should have done to begin with, and go after these builders and try and get a better density or whatever? So what happened in that interim? Are we doing environment impact assessment studies on all this land? Because some of this land was farmland, unpopulated. What is the impact on the environment when we are giving these developers all of these okays to do this? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for allowing us to ask questions.
Oh, you're welcome.
So the short answer is that the affordable units are rentals. So, so the Palmer Avenue project is all rentals, and it's going to be managed.
Please.
It's going to be managed by the developer, who will have on-site management. North Beer Street, the market rate units are going to be for sale, and the affordables are going to be rentals. And the reason that we do rentals on an affordable unit is twofold. Number one, Fair Share Housing Center is requiring rentals. So we can't settle with them if we don't provide rentals. We also need to, there's a regulatory requirement to provide rentals. Secondly, and I understand this argument, ownership versus rentals, and I've heard it many, many times. What I will tell you is home ownership in an affordable unit creates more problems than you can possibly imagine. In a rental unit, if someone doesn't pay their rent, they get kicked out. In a market rate unit that we've taken credit for, I have to tell you that I work in a number of municipalities that have a lot of units that are for sale, and I spend countless hours buying these properties that are going into foreclosure. Then the township becomes a housing agent. They're very difficult to sell. I'm sitting on several units right now in Tin Falls that I cannot get rid of because they were home ownership. The owner did not pay the mortgage. The bank kicked them out. The town stepped in because if you lose the credit, you got to provide it somewhere else. And now you're sitting on empty units that the town is subsidizing, and it's very difficult to reoccupy. Secondly, as Andy had said, it's these individuals, depending on their household size, have to qualify for a mortgage. And since the latest recession has kind of come back, qualifying for a mortgage has become much more complicated, especially because the deed restriction that is required to be put on these units gives the township the first right of the unit before the bank. So the banks are very reluctant to issue mortgages when they're not the first. So like if you default on your mortgage, the bank has the right to your unit. In an affordable unit, the bank is not the first person, they're the second person. And most banks are not thrilled with that issue. So for an affordable issue, number one, you get bonus credits, Fair Share is requiring it, and as far as a management aspect for an affordable unit, it's a better management issue for the township. Secondly, what I will say is between 2017 and now, as far as where we are, we had, and Andy can speak to this as well, we had mediation, mandatory mediation with the judge. He literally sat in the room with us and helped us negotiate with the developer. That did not happen in advance of that 2017 settlement. That happened across the board to the towns in Monmouth County. We were in one after the other, where we sat in a room with the judge and the special master. One developer came in after the other, and the judge helped facilitate this aggressive settlement. That did not happen in advance. And I will tell you, in dealing with these people, we were told, this is it, this is it, this is it. And when we sat with the judge and we told them we're not having it, all of a sudden, lo and behold, they came up with an alternative proposal.
And in that regard, also the judge ordered a couple of our elected officials to come to the conference. So the deputy mayor and Committeeman Pascucci came to actually court, which I think helped solidify the township's resolve and position in terms of those negotiations.
And then finally, your question about the environmental impact statement. The developer is responsible, first of all, in the DEP issues with respect to wetlands and streams. All the sites that are included in the project, in the plan, have DEP approvals in hand. So that has been done. I understand your position with respect to the farming, and that's something that will be vetted out by the developer during the site plan process. But yes, it will be taken into
I
consideration.
just want to make a comment when you mentioned about rentals. I owned rentals, and let me tell you this. When somebody doesn't pay the rent and they're poor, the government's not on your side. They sit in that apartment and don't pay rent. And they destroy. So it's a whole different thing, because if they destroy the apartment, they don't care. If they own it, that's a different story. So just comment on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mike Sokol, 6 Wild Hedge Lane. Just as a disclaimer, although I am on the school board, I'm not speaking for the school board. Just a quick question. Is there any way that the township can establish a preference to these units to school and municipal employees here in Holmdel?
Unfortunately not. Years ago, when the COA regime was first established, towns could do that. The law has changed, and the affordable units need to be marketed affirmatively, meaning to the world. I mean, certainly, so we can't say that township residents get preference. It's just illegal.
I did read in the municipal magazine that we all get that there is potential legislation that's trying to get into the assembly, which would give preferential or priority if you're already living in the community. So it could, for people that already live here or work here, they could get it from, my interpretation, somebody who lives, up in North Jersey, right? So they're trying to keep people that live here, that want to stay here, give them the first preference of being able to purchase or rent an affordable unit.
Andy, this is not my idea. I'm going to give the credit to Mr. Hines. Cannot we market it though, like go to the hospital, because a lot of the people who work at the hospital don't make a lot of money? Can't we actively go there and market it to them that we have this new facility on the street?
As long as you market it to the world, but you could separately, aggressively go to local businesses and say, hey, we have this in town, tell your people to apply, right? Yeah, absolutely. You can't exclude a non-township resident or business, an employee of the business. Well, we have an administrative agent, community grants and planning, and there's a process they file which follows state regulation.
Hi, Robert Gennicky, 77 Arlington Court. I'm currently the president of the Board of Trustees for Palmer Square HOA. And I have to say, we contracted an attorney, and you're probably aware that he's one of the intervening parties.
He's been in court.
And the last time he was there, the Judge O'Brien was about to remove Palmer Square even from consideration in this. And one party objected, so went back in the mix. The proposal was for 50 units, 10 affordable. I was shocked to see it's now increased by 20%. And I think one of the problems, and several members of the committee are aware of this, the last time we went through this exercise, it was only a difference of 10 units that created a 331-foot long structure, larger than Costco, larger than Dearborn and their greenhouse. The largest structure in Holmdel would have been on the sliver of land next to Palmer Square. It's inappropriate to have something with that kind of a density. We have no apartment blocks in Holmdel. We don't build apartment buildings. I left New York to get away from apartment buildings. And this is what is being proposed, and it's troubling to me, not because it's affordable. Please don't misunderstand. As I've said before to the committee, I'm the poster child for affordable housing. I lived in it for 33 years in Manhattan. I believe in it. I believe in inclusionary affordable housing. 2 of the 4 members of our current board are people who live in affordable housing in Palmer Square. We're all for it. We don't care if you build 30 units, which would fit on that property, if every one of them was affordable. And I can say that with pretty good authority because I've been speaking to a lot of the residents, a lot of the homeowners. They are in favor of affordable housing. You're just not in favor of a structure that size. And other people will be addressing, I'm sure, the rainfall and the flooding issues. But it is really a major burden on that property to build a structure of that volume and take over that area. It will forever change the character. It can't be undone. And I would say that this is, pardon the rainfall reference, this is precipitous. This is a decision that's too soon. It is too, it should really be reviewed again. I would strongly urge. I mean, my solution that I'm offering is at least reduce the total number of units, increase the affordable units if you wish at Palmer Avenue. But please reconsider this because we need to fight this. If we have to fight it in the court, we'll continue to have our attorney present and we'll have a big turnout. But you guys can head it off at the pass now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Jen, on Palmer Avenue, it's parking underneath and then 4 stories on top of parking? So it's 3 stories on top of parking. So it virtually looks like a 4-story building.
Do we have that anywhere else in town? I'll answer for you. You know.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm just suggesting, there's got to be a better alternative. And in fact, I'll work with anybody to come up with an alternative. We have people who study architecture who live in the area, who live in Palmer Square, and would be happy to work with a builder to come up with a workable alternative.
Right.
Plus, I understand the zoning, the variances are waived, and that's what stopped it last time,
Sure.
which is, I think, not a fair thing to do. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Did I misspeak?
No, I just want to state for the record and for everybody here.
Microphone, please.
Okay. Got it. So we are statutorily required to zone for these projects. That's required in the regulations. So it's not like the variances are waived. We are required to zone for these projects. That is required. So there will be zoning for this particular project. So that is part of the regulations. These folks up here have absolutely no ability to change that requirement. It is what it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Mercado. I live at 57 Duxbury, also Palmer Square. I was prior board president before Robert. Thank you for this opportunity to talk before you voted. And Mr. Scucci, I know you haven't seen some of the photos.
Speak into the mic, please.
I'm trying to. It's
Yeah,
not really working.
Turn that up, because we cannot hear.
Well, you know what? I'm pretty good at talking loud. So I'll circumvent the mic. If it's okay with you, I know some of the other committee members have seen photos of the flooding. Would you like to see? Can I provide this to you?
Yes,
Yeah,
Oh, it's in there. Seen it.
I have.
By the way, I was the one that corresponded with Judge O'Brien last year with closed sessions when he recommended that the property be removed for obvious reasons of flooding and it not being an appropriate project or a project of this size for those properties. I can tell you, as having been the board president for about 22 years, the silting of the stream has been done in the past, and it has had no effect. And I have corresponded with all of you numerous times over the years that we have flooding in that area 5, 7, 8 times a year. It actually seems like it's getting worse at this point, not better. With all that said, what I'd like is if, Mr. Nicolas, if you could provide an update on the Rutgers study.
Sure.
I know there was a statement that was put out. Thank you for the update on the raising of Palmer Avenue. I'd like to understand how that all plays into your thoughts of if you're doing raising of the road and you're putting more water back into the stream and you're already creating raging rapids, which you could probably see from some of the pictures I provided.
Hold the mic up, hold it up.
Is this better?
Yes.
If you're first going to raise the road and you're going to put more water back in, we don't know really what's going to happen. No offense, I know the engineers are saying they don't believe that it's going to cause any problems, but we really don't know that. And I think we need the Rutgers study, we need the results of that.
I could talk to you real quick about but a couple of weeks ago I got a phone call from the Spay and Neuter Center of New Jersey, which is located on 35, right by the bridge, right next to the Morris.
Yes, I know that well, and I've seen that get flood pretty bad.
Dr. Hancock gives me a call and asks, they know we are working on the Rutgers study, and a couple of weeks ago we had some pretty heavy flooding down there. I'm sure you're familiar with what happened. Their dumpsters actually floated away. And their dumpsters were actually stuck underneath the bridge. So I physically got down in there, I looked, and the amount of sediment that has built up under that bridge is very, very thick. We contacted Donna. We contacted New Jersey DOT. Excuse me, DOT. They were the waste management company didn't have the proper equipment to get the dumpsters out. I felt that they had to be removed immediately, otherwise they would dam up and flow over 35. But New Jersey DOT came out, they removed the dumpsters, and also we are waiting for the results of the study, the Rutgers study, which should be completed by the end of February, early March. They have computer models which are 3/4 of the way done right now. And we hope to have a final something to show the public, hopefully by the end of February. These grad students that are working on these studies and the study they take this stuff seriously. This is their big step.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that
No.
kind of proves my point, is that...
But that needs to be desilted and it needs to be desnagged. I agree,
Right,
yeah.
but as Jen had said, this is a regional problem. Not
Yeah.
all of this is controllable by Holmdel.
Correct.
And even if it is, a lot of it still could require...
That's why this study is so important, because it isn't a Holmdel problem.
Right, so the thing is then, if we allow a project like this to get built in an area we already know gets flooded, then how do we solve the problem when something bad happens and now my family, my property, my neighbors, my friends are flooded out and we're not made whole by you?
We are committed to finding long-term solutions.
I know, but what you're doing is you're putting the cart before the horse. You're allowing a building to possibly make the situation worse before you've had a chance to make it any better.
Well, possibly.
Well, let's face it, if you put this on the list and a builder has an opportunity to come in, they're going to force your hand.
So all your points are well taken, and as Jen stated and Andy stated, this process is a long ways away.
Right.
So during this time, simultaneously, our engineers working with the county will be going out to bid in January to do some work on Palmer Avenue. The developer is going to have to come in and show what they're going to do before the planning board and whatnot. So while this is just a settlement agreement for these proposed
I
sites,
fully understand.
nothing is set in stone.
But
And
with
we
that
understand,
said, but with
you
that
know,
said, we've already been down this road 2 years ago,
I understand
where
that.
we went before a
Unfortunately-
planning board, and our planning board, Mr. Hines, you were up there and you said, I don't think this is the right place to put this project. I don't think, you even said, why would you build there?
Okay, so in reference to everyone else's time, we hear you, we understand, and we're going to continue to work to mitigate the flooding. Whether or not this project is built or not, we're still working on the flooding. Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Goldstein, 24 East Law Drive. For your edification, I've said this before, I mentioned it before, there's a YouTube of the flooding on Palmer Avenue, okay? It also includes the flooding on Middle Road, where we have other developments being proposed. The bridge is completely submerged, okay? So as we're looking at just the Palmer Avenue issue, because that's what we're focusing on, there's other problems just around the block, okay? So we really got to look at the big picture. I urge you to work with Middletown because they're on the other side of the road. Their parking lot, also documented in the video that's online, are completely flooded. This is a big problem.
We were in their offices last week.
Good.
We visited them all the time.
For the edification of the community here, we're going all the way back to 35, which also floods, where the veterinarian hospital is, okay? This happens, from my understanding, 7 times this year already, okay? So this is a real problem. I think it would be a travesty to put this here, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Regina Cristione, 35 Rambling Drive. First, I have some procedural questions. I'm a little confused. You said that the resolution was already listed and introduced. When was that?
No,
Was it a resolution?
it was
Just
not.
keep asking your questions,
Yeah.
answer at the
Okay.
end. Just keep going through and also
Because I'm a little
resolution.
confused. Something was introduced a year or so ago. That's why
Well,
this
okay,
was not.
we got your question. Go ahead.
Okay. And if it was done before, that was for the last plan. Don't you need to reintroduce it for the new plan? Okay, that was my question. Also, were abutting property owners notified? If so, when and how were they notified? Third question, when you estimated the number of children, I assume that was per bedroom? I'm wondering, I know I grew up with 3 people in the bedroom, so was that taken into account? Another question is how high will the buildings be? I see Palmer Avenue will be 4 stories. What about the Middle Road and North Beard Street buildings? And lastly, I'm just confused as to why Bell Works in my mind, is getting a free pass for this. I know you said down the line they'll be responsible, but it seems like the developer is reaping the benefits of his development now, and so far has not had to provide anything for us.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
So,
Andy, you want
I'm going to go through these real quick, and then Jen will do something so we're going to keep this moving. So as far as the settlement agreement that was done last year, there wasn't a resolution. There was a settlement agreement that was done. That's the 2017. That included Bell Works. What happened was the judge came back to us and said, we need to fix this because Bell Works doesn't need to be included because the way the redevelopment agreement reads, they have until July of 2020. So that's why we had to do another settlement agreement. So as far as notification, there's no process for that. This is just a settlement agreement. Once all of these ordinances and zoning get put in place, there'll be notification at that point. This is just merely an agreement between the town and Fair Share that has to go before a judge and get its blessing.
Okay, so at that point there'll be a public
Yes,
hearing?
yes, absolutely. I'll let Jen speak to the school-age children because she's a pro on that.
So we don't just generally take the bedrooms and say, you know, X number of kids per bedroom. There are multipliers that are established through records that are based upon studies of existing developments throughout the town, or not the town, throughout the state, that we utilize. And there's separate multipliers for affordable units than they are for market rate units because generally affordable units generate more kids per bedroom. So it's based upon the 1-bedroom units has a multiplier, the 2-bedroom units have a multiplier, and the 3-bedroom units have a multiplier. And those are established numbers, industry standard, accepted by Rutgers, and that's what's utilized throughout the state to generate an approximation of school-age children.
Thank you.
And how high are the buildings?
The Palmer Avenue is 3 stories over parking. The balance are, I think, Middle Road is 2 stories, and the market rate units at North Pierce are 3 stories.
What's the height?
And the height?
Well, the height is going to depend on the architecture, and at that point, you know, this is something that's going to be negotiated
At the planning board.
when we deal with the ordinances and whatnot, because the way we measure height is to the midpoint of the roof, and we need to see what the roofs are going to look like. So it's going to be a 3-story structure, but you know, the actual number is going to depend upon the architecture. So we're not at that point yet. When we get there and the ordinances are introduced, there will be a public component to that.
For every process going forward, and there'll be public hearings and notifications.
And I would like to thank the committee for getting this number down. Thank you.
They work very hard.
And the administrator and professionals too.
Barbara Singer, 5 Deerfield Road. I'm not going to repeat everything on the Palmer Avenue. I've spoken here many times about that. I agree with what the past president, have said tonight. Also, I don't like that it does seem Somerset is getting a pass on their obligation, yet Palmer Avenue still has to provide these 12 units, given all the issues there. And the comments you've made in the past about developing on that property, I don't see why.
Barbara, you were here with, okay.
Let her finish. 3 minutes. Keep going.
I do have a specific question on the settlement agreement on page 5, paragraph 9B on Middle Road. The second sentence starts at the time of final judgment. The township will demonstrate site control, either through having voluntarily purchased the property. I'd like to know when that situation could come into reality, under what circumstances. Those are my 2
Okay, thank you.
questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, thank you.
In terms of Somerset development, I will tell you that this was a not formally litigated point, but we had numerous conferences with Judge O'Brien and Somerset Development Council. And as a result of the discussions between all of us, including Judge O'Brien, ultimately, based on the language of the redevelopment agreement, it was determined that to avoid litigation, that we would wait till July 2020 in terms of the language of the redevelopment agreement, so Somerset committed to how it was going to satisfy its affordable housing obligation.
And so in lawyer speak, we wanted Somerset to do it now. They said to us, no, we have until July 2020, and the judge tentatively agreed to that. That's why we took them out.
Okay, so their obligations still.
Their obligation is still there. They're not off the hook. They just aren't on the hook till 2020.
It'll be included in our next round.
It's less than 2 years away. They're going to have to
Yeah,
commit.
so they're going to have to do something. What it is, we don't know. And what about the acquisition?
In terms of the acquisition, in terms of timing, so there'll be a fairness hearing, as I said, let's say in February, March of next year. The court will, upon approval of the settlement agreement, the court will require the township to take certain actions, like amend, as Jen pointed out, update its master plan. That the court will give the township probably 6 months to do. That takes us to the latter part of 2019. And what the settlement agreement is saying is that by the time towards the end of next year at the earliest, we would have to reach an agreement with the property owner of Middle Road in terms of property acquisition. So we have all of basically next year to work on that.
I don't think that answered what my question was,
I
which
thought it
is
was
under
the time.
what, no, it's under what circumstances might Holmdel have to, it sounds like, purchase the property?
Well, what the township would do is purchase it and then convey it to a developer who would then develop the property 100% affordable housing.
So what happens, I mean, we're at that point because there's already been a problem finding someone to do that. If we can't, are we ever in a situation where we have to become landlords and develop it?
No, we haven't had, there has been no problem. There are numerous 100% affordable housing developers throughout New Jersey who have expressed interest in this project. The township committee will have to select who the best one is, but there certainly will be no problem finding a developer.
Thank you.
I did have a comment, two actually. Dr. Pascucci, you made a very bold statement about people having to go to jail if they're doing unethical things here. My question, which you don't have to answer, is are we, to believe that Mr. Cutelli, who had an interest in the property, gratuitously turned it over to his partner and would never be compensated for that, even if it's on another project. So while legally we're drawing lines, the reality is Mr. Cutelli is in the room today. I don't believe he should be in the room. And going through our minutes for past years, even before he flipped the property to his partner, there were times he was in the room. The problem is that you're subjecting, well, not subjecting, but it's the ability to obtain insider information. That's why you recuse yourself and leave the room.
Barbara, I'll attest that he has had nothing to do with this settlement.
Yeah, let's not,
I don't need you to attest because I already know what's in the records.
Barbara, you made some, I just want to respond to the one point about a recusal. This is a public meeting. The mayor took all the steps appropriate tonight in order to recuse himself from an action at a public meeting. He entered a statement into the record. He stepped off the dais, demonstrating that he is not the presiding officer at this point in time, and the deputy mayor is presiding. So every single step that should legally be taken to effectuate a recusal has been taken at this meeting, and to say otherwise is unfair and is just inconsistent with the law.
It's not unfair if someone is sitting in the room and getting insider information. That's the whole problem with having a conflict of interest.
You're absolutely right. If this were a closed meeting, a recused party would exit the room. This is a public meeting, so you leave the dais. There's case law on this about the appropriate procedure. We have followed that tonight. The mayor has followed that tonight. And so anything you're saying is
assuming you're right about
you're entitled to your
tonight.
opinion on this, but
Yes,
legally
of course.
don't. But it's unfair to say that there's anything that's improper from a legal standpoint.
Assuming you're right tonight, I found 2 instances before he flipped the property to his partner where he was in this room when it was being discussed and in an executive session, and I didn't even get through all the minutes yet. So it's up to you, like somebody else said, you're all aware.
Thank you for your comment.
I just want to also say one other thing on this subject generally, which is that I will tell you that both Fair Share and the court master found and urged the town, urged Jen and I to recommend to the committee to include the North Beer Street site in the plan because from their view, it was the best site in the township for affordable housing. So, and so just so we're clear about that, that was, they were, which is, anyway, I'm not going to get into the legal issue, but from a planning perspective, that was recommended.
Good evening. My name is Álvaro Diaz. I've been in this town for almost 30 years. Pretty sure most of you have seen me around.
Talk to the mic.
Into the mic.
You got to swallow it.
My name is Álvaro Diaz. Resident of this town for 30 years. I live in 5 Chestnut Ridge Road. I look at all these names of streets and I feel I'm under attack. All these developments right around where I live, or I commute to work. So the question, and fairness has been discussed here. So, and by the way, I mean, I hear the tremendous effort you did, and I thank you for bringing those numbers down. I was not aware of that. So good news is, thank you for that. The other part, the other side of the coin is, all these developments in North Holmdel. North Holmdel, this is what I want to bring to the floor here. North Holmdel is taking the brunt of the judicial obligations of Holmdel with the state. I submit to you, I don't walk out with a nice and cozy building. The load, the burden of this has spread across Holmdel. It's North Holmdel, the part of town that has to deal with this legal responsibility. I mean, what other options did you take? I mean,
that was your question, sir?
Yeah, I mean, so
It appears to be all on the north side.
Yeah, it's the north side.
It's a very fair comment, and
I've
it's
seen
true.
the traffic. I mean, I've seen the traffic increase tremendously.
I live right by the hospital, so
Okay.
it's very true.
Thank you.
One of the big challenges that we have as a group and as professionals is that unless you're in a sewer system, you really becomes, I don't want to say impossible, pretty much impossible.
I will say
Because- right.
the regulatory requirements require that these developments hook up to sewer. So the fact that the whole southern portion of town is not in the sewer service area eliminates that as a viable location for affordable housing. And so you have to go through the process of identifying if it's approvable, developable, and there's a whole set of standards, one of which requires access to sewer. And that, I don't disagree with you, because there is a finite amount of area in town that is sewered, and that's the area that we had to work with. So unfortunately, because the southern portion of town does not have sewer and it's not in the sewer service area, it's ineligible. And you can't even put a package plant outside the sewer service area at this point. So it's unfortunate. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but unfortunately our hands are tied in that regard.
But I mean, there are options, right? The sewer system could be expanded.
No.
So, I mean,
Unfortunately, no, it can't. In certain areas, it can't. It's a moratorium. I would love that.
hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you to you.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm kind of surprised.
State your name and address to the record,
Okay.
please.
Gail Rubin, 26 Miller Avenue in Holmdel, near Route 35. Well, my question, I'm surprised nobody even asked, but how will it affect taxes to the residents that are here now? And what year and when will it affect it? And what taxes will it affect? Like the municipality taxes, they're very minor. You also have school taxes, I guess county taxes, and the people that will live in the new structures, the structures that will be built, how are they going to be charged compared to us? Is it the same rate? Do they get a break? Like, what's going to go on there? And are our taxes going to be lowered? That would be nice. Or raised? And have you done any studies on this? Because this could probably be the biggest effect on the whole town. People can hardly afford their taxes now, and it is the #1 state or close to it to move out of. And if your taxes go up, a lot of people don't like that, and they just go out. And I'm also wondering why you want more people in, and why the state even wants it when people are moving out. So maybe you can answer some of those questions. And the other thing is with Palmer Avenue, that really should be fixed. That's horrendous if they have 5 or 6 floods a year. That shouldn't be taken lightly. None of you or me or anybody that I know that doesn't live there would move into that knowing that. And I don't even see how you're going to get people in those structures once they know it. So I would try to fix that. So I'm more interested in the taxes, but I like everything I had to answer. If you could, thank you.
Thank you. Jen or Andy, any?
That's not really my wheelhouse.
Donna?
Everybody knows that.
So the tax rate is determined on all the rateables in the town. So, and the assessment of those ratables. So by virtue of saying we're going to build new units, how that's going to affect the tax rate, it doesn't know, there's other items that go into the tax rate. So will it affect it? Will it bring it up? Will it bring it down? We won't know until all these projects are built and assessed.
But the only thing I'll add as a lawyer is that certainly the limited number of projected schools, I mean.
Yeah, 93 students
The
to the school.
concern is always the impact on the schools when you need additional school resources to take care of the additional children. So with the 93 projected students, I would think the township could handle that projection.
Yeah, and you may need more police. Yep. More services. All right, so you have, because I've heard your taxes could go up $1,000 a year, whatever, I don't know.
We're working on having our taxes stay flat, maybe even a tax cut in the next couple of years, so we'll see.
Your taxes are not going up $1,000 a year.
Thank you.
Okay, and then also, well, with Palmer Avenue, there's like money from the state all over with infrastructure. There's nothing that you can get.
Where is there money from the state for infrastructure?
I don't know, the federal government?
Yeah, so-
I see roads
Wait, is it the
all
state or the federal?
You tell me.
I don't know.
Well,
What are you
I
talking
see
about?
roads all the time, the Parkway, almost every town has it.
We get funding, we've gotten funding many times to do work on Crawford's Corner Road. We get funding, each year our engineer goes out and applies for funding from the DOT for us to make repairs. As I mentioned earlier, ourself and the county are working cooperatively to fix and mitigate the flooding over at Palmer Avenue. So we are looking at all opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, the money's there to you can get, so I'm sure you guys will. Thank you.
Hi, Jenny Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. My question relates to Palmer Avenue.
Mike's off.
Is it on now? Yeah. Okay, the question relates to the Palmer Avenue office building. We've been hearing about this office building since my hair was brown. If it is included in this resolution, and down the pike, if the planning and the zoning board decides that it is, as Ralph said, 10 pounds in a 5-pound sack and gets thrown out, then we're short 60 units. Where do you go from there? Are you still stuck with a campsite there, or do you have an opportunity of changing it to another hunk of property? Or are you in big trouble?
Is that all?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
So all these settlement agreements with Fair Share have a midpoint review, so if hypothetically Palmer Avenue was not approved for any of these reasons, the township would have an opportunity to try to find a substitute site. And we don't, but this, so that's what would happen, but it's not 60 units, it's only 12 affordable housing units that are at issue for the site.
It's still a big building.
That's a different.
Leah Shave, 11 Ladwood Drive. I don't believe this is the best you can do by any means. You have an ethically challenged property. You have a property with an incredible flooding issue that has disqualified it in the past, and now you're adding even more units to it. You've had over a year to come up with an alternative plan. This decision was delayed a few times in the past few months, and I would argue not to better the plan, but maybe possibly win an election. So what is happening to this town is far from right. If you vote on this tonight, in my opinion, you will be on record for knowingly voting for a controversial, unethical plan. And are you prepared for the ramifications of that, both legally and ethically? And are you willing to look at residents in the eyes and honestly tell them that you did the best that you could, and for all of the right reasons? This should be delayed for those reasons and for many more, and you've heard it from people here tonight.
If anybody else wants to comment, please come up to the microphone behind the gentleman, just so we're going to wrap up this session momentarily.
Is this just about color?
Just about color.
Clearly use that term loosely, calling me a gentleman, but 8 Sage Street. First of all, I know this is a very complex process you guys are going through, and COA, as we know, is something that you legally have to do. So first of all, I want to applaud the township and the committee for taking a proactive step in doing that. I mean, I believe the Supreme Court decision came out, it was only 2 or 3 months when the lawyer's already here saying we gotta do this litigation. So I'm not sure he's chasing after business and replacing the admin's lawyer. Oops, sorry about that. That's not politically correct. However, at the same time, I just want to know that I attended enough of these meetings in the past where lots of residents have raised questions about this and asked for public input, and you guys did a fantastic job on having the right people here and presenting it. But it seems to me that there's a lot to lay on to people in a very short time, and you folks, especially being professionally involved in this thing, have been involved in this for, call it 3 years, maybe even 18 months if you measure from the time of August of last year. So you guys had a lot of time to digest it, look at different options and things like that. I think for the rest of us as residents to kind of lay this, there's a lot to dump on in a very short time to kind of respond to it. So it seems to make sense on the surface. It seems that the numbers clearly are better than August and so on. And so obviously you guys are going to do what you want to do, and this is respectfully a suggestion is that perhaps think about maybe just delaying it to have time to really get call a special meeting or more information to more residents to get a chance to digest information and perhaps ask questions or whatever. So that's just a suggestion, because even for some of the very smart guys, you can see there's a lot of concerns and issues, and you know, this is a relatively new issue for me, and it's taking me a little while to catch up, but so I'm just barely catching up to you guys. So anyways, just a suggestion. You guys spend a lot of time on this thing, and you're asking residents basically lay out the plan and pretty much kind of come up and dance on the feet and ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Seeing no additional public, I'll close public portion. Since this is a, so for the attorney real quick, since this is a resolution, do I just go right to vote right now?
You could entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll second it.
Yeah, there would be any discussion if needed, otherwise roll call.
So any other discussion before? Okay.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, I just want to say real quick, it's important that we trust our professionals and we listen to their guidance and legal advice. It's equally important that we verify their information. None of us sitting up here are in favor of the New Jersey Supreme Court's interpretation of the New Jersey Constitution that permits New Jersey Fair Housing Center to legally force municipalities to enter into agreements with developers. This is not only an attack on our sovereignty, it's an unnecessary encroachment on our resources, our environment, and our school system. However, with the information before me, I believe it is in Holmdel's best interest to accept the settlement agreement with the court rather than continue litigations. When compared to municipalities in similar populations and demographics, I believe Holmdel is in a much, much better position than other towns. When I looked at other towns in Morris County that have similar demographics to Holmdel, such as Mendham, Roxbury, Randolph, Rockaway, Denville, Boonton, their numbers are significantly higher than ours, and especially in our area too, in Monmouth County. I also want to say that many residents have gone so far as to propose their own affordable housing plans, and they've approached us up here and privately say, hey, why don't you do this, do that, try this. All of those proposals and ideas were dismissed by our legal and professional planners. The courts will not accept them, because Fair Share will not accept them. Holmdel is a desirable town to live and work. There's no shortage of developers wishing to build new homes in our town. A vote to settle this and accept an agreement would stop and protect the township from any and all builders' remedy suits. Now that's very important to understand. That would stop all the litigation from builders' remedies, where we keep control of any potential new development in our planning and our zoning board. I believe delaying this action under the current governor and legislature would have devastating consequences for our town. In Holmdel, we are surrounded by towns, counties, and municipalities that are developing their open spaces at an incredible rate, and we need to protect ours. In order to save, preserve, and protect Holmdel, I believe we must settle with the court now so we can begin the process of defending our community For the next round of affordable housing obligations in 7 short years, I vote yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
I'm not going to give a big more political speech. That's not me, but this is a hard decision. This kept me up for months. Are the 3 sites ideal?
Microphone.
Are the 3 sites ideal? No. Are they the best ones that we came up with, and I think we can come up with, considering all the other sites we looked at, consider the north and